Also, there's some cupcakes back there. So last time I'm gonna say it, third time's a charm. If you don't eat a cupcake, hey, listen, that's on you. PS1 Grant works at Milpers. She made them for y'all, specifically for y'all. She's, a great leader she is. They strawberry flavored. Looks like they got Oreo crumbling or something on top of it. They look good. I don't know. Y'all try them out. Let me know how you like them. They're gonna be back there. RP1 is obviously indulging in one as we speak. But they for y'all. Don't let him eat them all up. All right. So we're gonna go over BUMED instruction 6440.5 Delta. Going back to what I said earlier, most BUMED instructions are going to be starting with a 6000 series. All right. So Navy Medicine's augmentation program. So with that being said, I will highly advise you. For some of y'all who was here with CMC earlier, be very, very wary. This may suck. It won't be your fault, but BUMED right now is currently writing a new instruction, so it's going to be the Echo. But with that being said, you have to be very wary because the next cycle, it may be updated on the advancement exam, it may not. I foresee maybe March of next year it being updated, so just look out for the changes on that. But this is being updated, so things that I say today may not be tomorrow's, same news as tomorrow. So just be wary of that. So the purpose, obviously, to issue policy and procedure guidelines for the sourcing and deployment of budget submitting office 18 personnel. BSO 18. Who does not know what BSO 18 means? So everyone in here knows what BSO 18 means. Raise your hand if you do not know what it means, because I see it has. Okay, so BSO 18 is BUMED. So all Bureau of Medicine personnel. So if you are with the Marines, you are not BSO 18. You are BSO 27. If you are attached to a ship, you are not BSO 18. I want to say you're BSO 20, because that's sea now or Fleet Forces, depending on which coast you're on, right? So BSO 18 is all personnel stationed within a Navy Medicine Readiness Training Command or Navy Medicine Readiness Training Unit. So BSO 18, you're going to see BSO 18 a lot because it pertains to everything BUMED, all right?
So I actually nerded out and looked this up at one point because I wanted to know what BSO meant and what they all are, right? All it is where's the funding coming from for certain activities, right? So all it's saying is that the funding for all Navy medicine, shore hospitals, or BSO 18 activities is coming from BUMED. That's where they're sourcing all of their funding, allocation, and resources to for that specific thing, right? You can actually see which commands fall underneath there, but most of the time, operation forces are going to be a lot separate than the BSO 18.
So question, everyone knows who owns the hospital ships, right? It's MSC, Military Sealift Command. Just because they are a hospital ship does not mean they're owned by BUMED, right? So remember that as well. Obviously, as you can see, to augment Department of Defense, Joint Staff, OPNAV, Marine Corps Headquarters, and U.S. Fleet Forces Command in support of contingency operations, full-scale war, or other national emergencies. Remember that. Both of these things that are in red will be on your exam. I've seen it on every exam I've taken starting at second class. If you haven't seen it, you got lucky, but I can bet that it'll probably be on this one. Reason why, especially now, because when we're all these deployments that people go on, right? IAs are supporting Fleet Forces Command. People going to different little places to go teach or do something like that, it's Fleet Forces Command. Fleet Forces Command is a 4-star command. Obviously in our local area it's Echelon 3 or Echelon 2. But most of our operational, when we support operational, it's supporting Fleet Forces Command via Headquarters Marine Corps or CNO, OPNAV. So remember those two things. This instruction, like I said, applies to all BSO 18 activities. So obviously that includes NAVMED Echelon 3 activities. Who knows what the Echelon 3 activities are? What are
they? Those are your fleet hospitals, like Army field, like full-scale Army field hospitals, or like the comfort of the emergency.
No.
Nope.
So Echelon, I ask this because people sometimes don't know, right? So anyone know what? So CNO, right? The Chief of
Echelon
Naval
1.
Operations, or OPNAV, is Echelon 1. Echelon 2 is the
BUMED.
Bureau of Medicine, aka BUMED. There are 3 Echelon 3 commands that we have. They're now named TICOMs. And we'll get into that, right? I ain't gonna jump ahead of that. But the 3 activities, right, because there's only 3 of them, and then all medical treatment facilities fall under BSO 18 activities. So remember that. All right, topics obviously is to man, equip, readiness, roles, responsibilities. Cool. These are the different terms. As you can see, some of these are already up. These go back to what CMC was saying with these handouts, right? These are the different XMEDs when it says terms. These are the different things that fall under this. So even though they may not be occurring now, this is why I say there's a new instruction coming out, because it's going to include the new XMEDs. These are the things that you need to know about, because these tell you where you may possibly get deployed if you get attached to one of these XMEDs. All right, so Navy Medicine Echelon 3 activities. There's 3 of them.
Yep.
Naval Medical Forces Atlantic, Naval Medical Forces Pacific, and Naval Medical Forces Support Command. Those are the 3 Echelon 3 commands. There used to be Navy Medicine West and Navy Medicine East, and Navy Medicine Training Education Training Command, something like that.
NMSTC.
Yeah, it used to be something weird, right? So they conduct assist visits every 2 years. All that means is, for instance, even though Naval Medical Forces Atlantic is here, within 2 years of the change of command, because usually the admirals switch out every 2 years, they should go and visit each one of their commands within that 2 years. So remember that. That's all that means, is when it says conduct assist visits every 2 years. POMI, all right. Appoints and writing. POMI is planning operations of medicine intelligence. All that is someone who goes out to, like, for instance, you remember how we were talking about Fleet Forces Command, Marine Headquarters, OPNAV. All that is a Navy Medicine HCA healthcare administrator, that is a POMI officer, goes to these different commands and helps plan war games. Y'all know the movie Battleship, right? Or how they had, what was it, Realm Pack that they were doing at the beginning of the movie? All Realm Pack is a huge exercise in the Pacific, Indo-PACOM. All these planners do is go and make sure that we can provide the necessary medical assets that are needed if we were to go to a large-scale war or anything else like that, such as Iraq or Afghanistan, or even what's going on right now in the Middle East. That's all that is. So they're appointed in writing. A POMI officer are enlisted to execute the day-to-day responsibilities outlined in this instruction, right? Usually this is a collateral duty. Like, for instance, I work in POMI at NMFL. There are members who work in POMI. Is Agent 2 Gonzalez in here? Right? Agent 2 Gonzalez, she works in POMI at Portsmouth, right? So just remember that. Appointed in writing is a POMI officer or enlisted. The sourcing command, POMI. The sourcing command, all that means is, for instance, right, if I task Portsmouth or Agent 2 Gonzalez with the tasker, right, she is considered the sourcing command. She is the sourcing command because her command is the one that's picking someone from their command and sending them to support this tasker, right? So they conduct the quarterly data analysis for personnel deficiencies, deployment trends, and readiness of Navy medical forces obligated to platforms or operating forces, and impacts on sourcing command healthcare operations as required. All that means is, you know how y'all get told, hey, y'all got to do y'all's, look at y'all's IMR, because you dinked on dental, you dinked on your PHA, you dinked on these shots, you dinked on this. That's how the Navy knows if you're deployable or not, right? So, for instance, Portsmouth, Agent 2 Gonzalez, her job is to make sure there's a system called imparts, and we'll talk about it, that she has to make sure that everybody in that command is not being dinked, or they are considered worldwide deployable within that system. Why? Because then every week, all the COs of all the NMRTCs and NMRTUs must then brief the admiral on where their deployability status is for their command, right? Which means that the Joint Chief of Staff can say, hey, I need EMF Juliet to deploy right now to Iraq. Cool. Are they deployable? Well, because they brief the admiral every week on it, the admiral knows that they are deployable. So all 450 people, however many people are there, get deployed and go into country and theater. Right? So that is why it's always important to make sure you guys get your PHAs done, to make sure you guys get y'all's dental done, because there are 4-star generals, admirals, and the president that is looking at this directly. It may not say your name directly, but you do affect that command's readiness.
So to make this make sense for y'all, right, because I want to kind of help you understand, right? So POMI is all centered around just taking people from shore commands to support operations, right? Because when you're green side, I talked about it before on the previous PowerPoint went over, they use their sourcing from MLG, right? So for all these other exercises and operations for shoreside commands, a big example of this was COVID, right? They said that everybody needed to be vaccinated, right? Well, they didn't have enough bodies to vaccinate all these people. So then they sourced out from all these BSO 18 activities for bodies to go support that operation, so the mission was completed, right? That's all it's saying is it's a different kind of deployability from green side and blue side, but it's just saying, hey, if we need to augment more people, we need to make sure that those that have been identified for this specific platform are individually medically ready to go out to that unit. For echelons too, I want to hit on, if you want to know the list, so you don't get confused on echelons, your BUMED instruction 5450.165 Charlie is your organization instruction that lists all the echelons on there, so you cannot get them confused. Because 4 and 5 is where things get a little choppy on who falls where, right? So know that for your echelons.
So, sourcing command also, understand this, they assume the command POMI responsibilities if needed. So, you got your POMI officer, you have your OSO. OSO works with...
What does OSO stand for?
Operational Support Officer.
That's all it is. The difference between that is, POMI is active duty, OSO is reserve.
It's called Reserve Program Director.
So it's RPD. So if you know what RP is, it's the same thing. It's just one does active duty side, the other one deals with the reserve side. Right? So, for instance, Naval Medical Forces Atlantic, which we all fall under if you work at Portsmouth, has both an active duty component, and then they also have reserve people who go to, there's a certain amount of reserve centers that they own, right, that they can pull their members from to support the missions if need be. All right? So, just understand that. If there is no actual POMI, which is an active duty officer or enlisted member, the OSO who does deal with the reserves can take responsibility as a POMI. All right. So reports to the sourcing command POMI immediately upon identifications of changes or events that affect their deployment readiness status within 48 hours of knowledge of change and condition. So what that means is, what's supposed to happen is, for instance, if you come from class 1 to class 3, you should notify your POMI. Why? Because you are no longer worldwide deployable. Or, females, if you come from not being pregnant to being pregnant, you need to notify your POMI because you are no longer deployable. Or, if you come from being in a fit for full duty status to LIMDU status, you need to notify your POMI office, right? Why? Because your POMI has to go inside MPARTS, the system that I was talking about earlier, to change your deployability status and to change that you cannot be pulled for a mission. Why? At NMFL, we're going to do a bending analysis of each command to see who has what. If that's not updated, and all we know is states in MPARTS that you are deployable. So you will be slated until we are told otherwise and have documentation otherwise stating that you are not deployable. And then if that's the case, right, you do have proof, then we can change it. But that needs to be notified to your POMI so that they can change that. That way we don't have issues where we're contacting you or you're being contacted to support a mission that you can't support.
Plus the times so they can identify an alternate, right? So the minute, because a mission, if he can tell you, working at MFL, missions message can come out tomorrow that somebody needs to go there, right? And if you didn't let them know that condition, you waited a couple weeks, they now don't have an alternate for a body they should be sending to support whatever that mission is.
And
right?
going back to who I said that we're supporting Fleet Forces. This is a 4-star admiral. Yeah, we work for BUMED, which is a 2-star admiral. But at the end of the day, who do you think has a little more power? 4-star or 2-star? right? Especially when you have a 4-star who's in charge of the biggest naval forces within the world, right? So think about that, because the Joint Chief of Staff is looking at this, which means that they're probably being told by SecNav, and the President have been told that we can support these missions. So imparts, Expeditionary Medicine Platform Augmentation Readiness Training System. This will be on your exam. I've seen it. This is important because this is the system that Big Navy looks at to see what is the deployability status of the members at commands, right? So right now, they're starting to upload these new XMEDs. So some of y'all who have specialties, your orders may end up changing and your UIC may change because they're coming online. So like if you're a surge tech, you may get attached to an ERSS. If you are a SAR corpsman, which I know none of them are in here because I know the 5 that we got within our own entire AOR, you may switch over to ERCS. Right? So think about stuff like that. That's where this system tells us if Big Navy, how many people at that command is deployable and how many is not. H2 Gonzalez, are you very familiar with this place? Imparts? Do you like it?
No.
Yeah, none of us do. Unfortunately, none of us do.
So if I understand what you just said right, so imparts is when they can see like the individual data, not just like the command as a whole.
So the command itself, so it depends on the access you have, right? So me at NMFL, Agent 2 Gonzalez, so Agent 2 Gonzalez can only see at Portsmouth, right? Me, I can actually see all 3 Echelon 3 commands. At the BUMED level and OpNav and CNO level, the way it shows up is NMFL, and then it shows CRTS 7, CRTS 5, EMF Juliet, EMF Mike, EMF Kilo, NMRTC Portsmouth, NMRTC Bethesda. It shows up based off the command level. Now, at the command's personal level, they can see everyone's. But what it'll do is, it'll show, there's 3 sections, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. It's administration, training, and there's one more, I can't think of it. Oh, it's the entire readiness. So it'll either be yellow, red, or green. If it's red, obviously, you're below a certain percentage. If it's yellow, you're at a certain percentage. And if it's green, you're above the percentage that they need you to be at. All that says is, this command is deployable. Because this is an expeditionary command, you should be ready. You know, we in the Navy, you should be ready to deploy it at any moment, right? There's a courtesy of giving you time. But if the Navy comes out and says, hey, HM2s, we need every single HM2 in here to deploy. Unfortunately, I know it sounds bad, but we're in the Navy. Now, with that being said, there's certain things that take into place, right? Who's married and has kids, right? So some of the stuff that's taken into consideration is this, and this will hit on your deployability status if you have a family care plan taken care of, right? So for instance, if your profile in this is not updated, which is who does Dimmer's Eye?
Holy shit.
Who hates Dimmer's Eye?
Oh my god.
No. Who loves it?
Who loves Dimmer's Eye? Right? Everyone does. Everyone hates Dimmer's Eye. Everyone knows about Dimmer's Eye, right? As much as you hate it, Dimmer's Eye falls into imparts. It reads into imparts.
It's a Manning shaping tool.
Right? So it tells them what your bill. Huh? We only do it here because out in the fleet. But in the fleet, it doesn't matter because in the fleet, you're at an operational command. You should be ready to go at a notice. Right? You at sea. That's a sea tour. You should always be ready, right? When you're at a shore command, it's a little different because obviously if you're on shore, anything could possibly, you can get pregnant at any moment's notice. You can go limb do at any moment's notice, right? So that's what that's for. That answer your question, HM2?
Yes, thank you.
Before you go on the next slide, just because I know this will throw people off on the test, read that last sentence, right? So it says designated official readiness tracking reporting system. What does that also sound like? Just so you guys don't get confused. It sounds like MERS, right? So the key word for MERS is just medical readiness, right? So if you see the word medical readiness in there and whatever questions could be on the test, that's related to MERS. If it's talking about readiness overall and reporting, relate that to imparts. I'm telling you because that's the exact question they'll put on the test and list MERS as the other choice.
Understand, this system is bigger than MERS.
That has been on the test, actually.
It has, yeah.
So basically, imparts is what.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so basically, imparts is like everyone's training as well.
No, it's not just training. It's everything, right? It's just not like, so MERS is small, right? Because it's just medical, right? So MERS tells you your shots, tells you your dental, right? It tells you those little things. This tells us the bigger picture, right? Overall, everything. It tells you the whole entire story, but it does it based off of bigger topics. Do you have a page 2, right? Do you have an official passport? Is your BLS or TCCC, like the basic things we need for when it comes to training, is that as a corpsman, the basic HMSB, is that taken care of, right? This system doesn't show me, oh, you don't have an HIV, well, no, it does do HIV, excuse me. You don't have a flu shot done. So it just does the big Navy, when you think of big Navy programs that Navy always harps on, think of it as this. Imparts is the big things. MERS is just Navy medicine. Yo, we need you to go get your flu shot.
So to make this make sense, right? All this is platform assignments, meaning that I'm requesting a specific NEC to go to this location, right? So if this specific NEC has to have required training to be up to date on that required training, i.e. ACLS, or for your Prev Meds, if they've got their pest management certification, whatever it is, so that way I know that they are all qualified to augment out to whatever platform that is.
Example, I was assigned a CAP. They wanted a specific person with an NEC that was medically ready, so that's the MERS part, and then had a previous assignment somewhere else. So there was only 5 people in this post that had those specific trainings based on what was in imparts.
Okay. But also understand there are some things in imparts that we don't know, which is why the commies have to be aware of what the command has, right? Like, because some stuff like official passports, right? Who has an official passport in here? Right? A red one, right? Right? A lot of people don't have that, right? But a lot of these missions, you need it, and we can't tell. So even though it's not put in here, it has to, like, even though it may not show up in here, it has to be put in here based off of Agent 2 Gonzalez. Yeah, I'm gonna keep pointing to you, Agent 2, because this is your bread and butter. So these are those platforms, right? Also, if you look at the X-Meds and platforms are pretty much the same thing. The only difference is, right, like X-Meds are like expeditionary, hey, we pretty much like a boot on the ground, right? Not all of these are boots on the ground. Not all of these are going to go and be in the middle of a war or do like care, like an FDPMU. Anyone know what an FDPMU is?
Forward Deployed Preventive Maintenance Unit.
Right. OCON is MTF. OCON is MTF. Like Guam ain't going, it's a fixed. They ain't not going, right? So you got to think about the X-Meds versus the platforms, but this is just where they look for their manning from.
This isn't just a list. This is precedence. So in this order, right? Because that's how they'll ask it on the test. Is like,
yeah.
Who's the...
If you see that, yeah. I know this was on my Cheeks exam, my last Cheeks exam. So this is how it goes.
It's biggest to smallest. Think
right?
of it that way.
So this goes off of based off like boots on the ground. So Marine Forces, right? That is the Navy's boots on the ground, right? Because we're not like the Army where we got a platoon or whatever they send over, right? Then you got a CRTS ship, right? That's a ship. Anyone know a ship that's like that? The baton, right? Because you can put a CRTS or FST onto it to help, right? Then you got TAH, right? Which is a medical ship. You got your EMFs, which are row. Anybody know what row they are? Row 2, FDPMU, right? Which the lower you get, the less actual patient care you get to because it's less. If you die here, it's not really like life-threatening, right? We kind of took away the main cause of why we had to activate medical care being out in theater.
When those new, what do you call them?
The X-Meds, expeditionary, they're just platforms.
Are they going to be different UX? Like, is that what the current counselor will have to add those for access to the full?
So yes, they will be. Imparts, like I said, imparts, I wish I logged and showed you guys. Imparts, so these are actual, so for instance, remember how we talked about BSO 18s? You got Echelon 3, Echelon 4, Echelon 5, right? So Portsmouth is what? Anyone know what Portsmouth is?
Echelon 4.
Echelon 4, right? You know what the clinics are?
Echelon 5.
Man, not you.
Oh, sorry.
Echelon 5s, right? So what's going to happen is Portsmouth is going to be their echelon 4. EMF Juliet is what? Is it 4? You sure?
Because it's here.
But it's a 5 because it falls under Portsmouth. Yeah, EMFs are echelon. You see where it's at? It's below a hospital, right? So EMFs are echelon 5s. CRTS is echelon 5s. Anything up here is pretty much an echelon 5. Because a hospital is going to most likely fall under a hospital, right? They're going to, if it's an echelon 5, most likely it has a what? This is the biggest thing I can tell you. Echelon 5s have OICs versus COs.
But EMFJ has the CO.
Which is why that's the only exception. It's the don't get listen, I don't make listen. If you look at imparts, it is an echelon 5. It is not a 4 because their CO, and this is the reason why, because when they go out into the theater, they're considered their own command. There's no facility for it, so that's why it's considered an echelon 5, not an echelon 4, because technically it's non-fixed.
Right. Okay.
So their CO answers to Captain Feldman. And listen, I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot me. So we're almost done. I'm gonna make this quick, right? So RFF and the RFS. Only difference is a RFF is a request for forces, which originates from the Naval Component Commander, who's the joint staff for capabilities and support of command. What that means is combatant commands. Anybody know what those are?
Yes.
What are the combatant commands?
Infantry units.
R4.
No.
Sectional.
What is it? Who said what?
Sectional.
CENTCOM, UCOM, NORCOM, right? The combatant commanders, which are usually like 3 stars or 4 stars that are in charge of an entire area or entire continent, right? So there's like, I want to say 8 or 9 of them. So RFF comes from them because they answer directly to the Joint Chief of Staff. RFS, a Navy-to-Navy request from a Navy component for capabilities and support of Navy requirements, right? So for instance, if the Kearsarge or the Ford needs a behavior health tech because their behavior health tech hasn't graduated, C school yet, they're going to send up a RFS up through their chain of command. It's going to come down through BUMEDINST to Naval Air Forces Atlantic, and then we're going to send them a behavior health tech. That is an RFS. Request for forces will be if Iraq, we broke out in war again in Iraq, and or better yet, somewhere in UCOM or AFRICOM, they're like, yo, we need an EMF. They're going to request for us to send EMF Juliet over to them. That makes sense?
So
Navy to Navy, right? So within Navy versus combatant commanders. I don't even know if any Navy. Yeah, there's no Navy admirals in charge of any combatant commanders. Usually it's an Army, right? So if we have ship to ship or ship to hospital, right? Navy to Navy. Anything outside of that in a bigger spectrum is RFF. Questions, comments, concerns about that?
So I say RFS is, I use it as request for self to know that I'm talking about Navy, that I want it for ourselves, right? So if you're trying to get confused and remember them, just request for forces and request for self. So you know self is always going to be related to Navy requests.
Some of this stuff is just repeat, right? Navy medicine personnel responsible for maintaining their own individual deployment readiness, right? While we have IMRs. Command palming. Within 48 knowledges of change in condition, we already talked about that. Navy enlisted personnel serving with Marine Corps units are authorized special initial clothing allowances.
Yep.
This is about to change, but I know as of right now, this is something that was stated that was on the exam before. And then Navy officers may purchase and wear the utility uniform. We got utility uniforms.
So what this is saying, right, is say right now some of y'all are blue side, and you've been blue side for 3 years, and you go back to a green side command, right? What would happen is, because of that time frame of being away, they will now issue you a new set of camis and report back to a green side command.
Anybody went on a MU rotation to Iraq, Erbil, Iraq? You did, right? So when he went, if he went from here, they gave everyone down at Nimmerlich all new uniforms to go in the country, right? They gave them new boots. They gave them, was supposed to give them frog tops and stuff like that so that they can utilize the uniform that they're supposed to have within the environment that they're going to serve in. That's what that means.
I know that may be the instruction up there, but that is not carved in stone because I have not been given any kind of MARPAT uniform since field med.
Well, with that being said, that's also, if you're Marine side, this is for Navy. So if you were to go and support, like I said, Iraq from here, Navy will give this to you. Marines are a little bit different. I don't know how they work over there. I ain't never been Green side.
Go by yourself.
But Navy,
Your
if
command
you're
must
going
suck.
into an area where you need a special uniform, for instance, cold weather gear, we will pay for you to get the cold weather, for you to have the cold weather gear to support the mission that you're supposed to be in. That's what this is saying, right? So if it's a certain mission that needs certain uniforms, we will provide it for you. If you got to turn it back in, if you turn it back in, that's on you. So most important part, the travel expenses, personnel from sourcing command to the port of embarkation or the CONUS ECRS. So I can really break this instruction down a lot more, but it'd take forever. ECR is supposed to be
ERCS
is here in Norfolk. Usually you're only going there if you're going into an individual augmentee. The biggest thing that you need to take from this is point of embarkation means that if you're going to Jordan for a mission, right, and you're coming from Jacksonville, the command will pay for you. Port Jacksonville will pay for you to come up here to Norfolk to go to your training. Once you get here to do your training, everything else, money-wise, whether it's family separation pay, whether it's hazardous combat pay, hazardous duty pay, if it's per diem, is no longer on your command. It is on the command that requested the support. Now, when it says point of debarkation, let's say you go to Jordan, and instead of flying you home back to Norfolk, they fly you up to New York. Don't ask me why, this is just a scenario. Your command will only pay for you to come fly from New York back to Jacksonville. That's all that means when it says point of embarkation and point of debarkation. Anything in between, because there are some missions where certain commands will pay for the whole entire thing. Or certain commands, and I've seen a question where they ask, if you were to go here, travel here, and do this, who's paying for it? It's the sourcing command. Just remember that. Sourcing command pays for point of embarkation and point of debarkation.
So to break it down Barney style, this, because I know this all looks confusing, right? Sourcing command is just responsible for the uniforms and getting the person to that site, right? Anything that's involved with the actual training, the actual mission, or anything within that actual area of AOR is covered by the command that they're going to, right? Any unit-specific gear that's needed for that mission should be covered by them.
And if you look right here, literally it tells you what the sourcing command will not be paying for, right? It breaks it down. Firearms and ammunition, individual protective equipment, personnel protective equipment, travel costs, miscellaneous expenses, going back to that family separation pay, stuff like that, and the consumable medical supplies and equipment to be utilized, right? So that's the stuff that they're not going to pay for. Point of embarkation, point of debarkation, sourcing command. They will ask a question like that, and they may try to trick you up by giving you a scenario, but it's always sourcing command. They may even say sourcing region in there. It's not the sourcing region, right? The new instruction, worry about the new instruction when the new instruction comes out. If someone tells you anything different, and then someone says, hey, no, the sourcing region pays for it, tell them, okay, cool, thank you, got it, but for my exam purposes, it's sourcing command. And then that's it.